PTE is not one of those exams that you can watch a video the night before and then go pass with 90 out of 90 the next day. You really need to understand in order to get a high score. You could literally have Albert Einstein or Barack Obama giving this exam and they fail. How come I'm a native speaker, I cannot pass this exam? Because PTE is all about the tips and strategies and techniques in order to get a high score. What questions carry the most marks? In read aloud, repeat sentence, fill in the blanks, and dictation, you will get more than 65 in each of the 4 sections in the exam just for that. And they understand how does the structure work, they get 90 out of 90. Hey there, welcome to this video. My name is Alex, and in this video, I'm going to share the top 5 of my best tips in order to help you pass the PTE academic test. So let's get straight into it. Now, before we get started, I want to thank you, first of all, for finding this video, and I want to congratulate you that you're on the right track. That means you're doing your research, you're trying to find out how does the exam work, etc., etc. But there are some things you really need to understand in order to get a high score, because there's a lot of people who are very intelligent. They're very smart, very well educated. They think that PTE is easier, which it actually is, because a lot of their friends, for example, couldn't pass IELTS, but now all of a sudden they're getting like 85, 90 out of 90 in PTE. So PTE is definitely easier, okay? Now, the unfortunate thing is a lot of these very intelligent people like yourself, they don't know what they're doing. They just watch a couple of videos, they go to the exam, they get a terrible score, like even worse than they did in IELTS. And they think, this is not for me. Or maybe they try again and something goes up, something else goes down, and they think this is not for me. Well, here's the truth. The truth is that if you've never given PTE academic, I can personally teach any person to get at least 65 in each section. I've had many students who didn't speak English very well, but as long as they studied hard, they understood the structure of the exam, and then they actually followed the steps and focused on the important areas, they were able to score 65 plus and quite often 79 plus or even 90 out of 90. Now, here's the reason why. People who pass PTE, they usually tend to understand or they tend to learn how does the structure of the exam work, first of all. And second thing is they understand the scoring, because PTE is all about the tips and strategies and techniques in order to get a high score. You could have somebody with a perfect English. Sometimes I get Irish students or Scottish students and they fail and they think, what the heck is this exam? How come I'm a native speaker, I cannot pass this exam? And then when we have 1 or 2 sessions with them and they understand how does the structure work, they get 90 out of 90. Okay, so let's break it down step by step. Tip number 1 is learn the exam structure. Now, for this step, it's enough to watch some YouTube videos just so you understand how does the exam work. Meaning, you understand, number 1, that this is a computer-based test. So every single thing is done on the computer. Now, the reason this is important is oftentimes you can trick the computer to give you points even though you're not making sense or you're not making coherent sentences or you're not giving the most logical advice. I know a lot of you here are engineers, you are IT workers, finance people, accountants, software engineers, programmers, developers. So you're very logical. And when you understand the computer marking and how does it work, it's going to help you pass the exam much easier because you understand how it works in the back end, right? So step number 1 is you need to understand how does the exam work. I will link in the description of this video. We have a 15 or 20 minute video with a full exam overview so you understand every single section and every single question one by one. This is the first step. Of course, with this, it's going to come the understanding of the timing for each question. Some sections you have a time limit, other sections you don't. So you have to manage the time by yourself. And this is very important because you could literally have Albert Einstein or Barack Obama giving this exam. And if they don't understand the timing and they miss the last one question in the exam, the very last question, they will automatically fail their listening and writing. Okay. Now, the reason why is because of the marking distribution. Some questions are way more important than other questions. And out of 20 different types of questions, there's only about 4 or 5 that are very important, which brings me to tip number 2. You have to understand how does the scoring work? What questions carry the most marks? Okay. So there's something called the Pareto principle, and you may have heard it under a different name like the 80-20 rule, okay? And it applies everywhere. 20% of your customers in your business will generate 80% of the revenue. 20% of your ideas are going to generate 80% of your success in any endeavor that you take. So basically, by focusing on the 20% which are most important, you can get disproportionate results. Now, when it comes to PTE, what are these important questions? Number 1, read aloud in speaking. It is one of the most important questions in the exam because it shares marks both in speaking, but also in the reading section, okay? And if you do this question well, you will get up to 35 points, even up to 40 points, depending on the number of questions, both in your speaking and in your reading section. So let's say you're somebody who just needs 50, okay? The majority of your marks in reading out of 50 will come from read aloud, which is the very first question. Or if you need 65, more than half of your marks in reading will come from speaking. So this is why this is one of the most important questions. Second question that you should focus on is repeat sentences in speaking. And this is the second question in the exam. So this is where you hear a sentence, you have 1 or 2 seconds to think about it, and then you have to repeat it as it is word for word. Now, the trick is you don't need to actually repeat it word for word, but you can watch more in one of our other videos about repeat sentences. This question, again, gives you a disproportionate amount of marks in your listening and disproportionate amount of marks in your speaking. So if you understand how does the scoring for this question work and what are the important parts of the sentence, because it's very difficult, even for native English speakers, to get 12 or 13 or 14 words. But if you can manage to get only 5 or 6 words in sequence, this will actually give you the majority of the marks again. So understanding the marking, it's not only about the exam, not about the overall questions which are important, but it's also within each question, what are the most important things you have to focus on. So second step is understanding the marking of each of the questions. And I've kind of alluded to this already in the previous 2 points, but step number 3 is practicing the most important questions. What are these most important questions? We've already discussed read aloud. We've already discussed repeat sentences. Now, in the reading section, there are 2 types of fill in the blanks. So I'm just going to group them as one because obviously when you practice on different websites, the way you prepare for both of them is similar. You got to study some basic grammar. You got to practice a lot of questions to improve your vocabulary so you're familiar with the academic words. And of course, the timing. So this is the third question, reading fill in the blanks and reading and writing fill in the blanks. And the last one is write from dictation in the listening section. So those are the 4 most important ones. I've been on YouTube for more than 5 years telling people to practice every single day, read aloud, repeat sentence, fill in the blanks, and write from dictations. Now, it is so disproportionately focused on those 4 sections that if you go to the exam tomorrow and you do those 4 sections perfectly, read aloud, repeat sentence, the 2 types of fill in the blanks, and write from dictation. And for the other questions, you're doing the bare minimum. You're not giving very good answers. You're just fulfilling the minimum requirement. You got an essay, which is 200 to 300 words. You wrote 220 words. You made some mistakes. You got the writing summaries. You got the listening summaries. You have some mistakes here and there. It's not incredibly fascinating or your answer is not particularly logical or well-written, but you just did the bare minimum. You got more than 50, 60 words and no major structural mistakes. But as long as you do well in read aloud, repeat sentence, fill in the blanks, and dictation, you will get more than 65 in each of the 4 sections in the exam just for that. So again, how is this possible? And people oftentimes ask me, how about writing? Alex, you haven't mentioned any questions in writing. Well, again, for the summarized written text and the essay, as long as you don't have major mistakes, like you didn't forget to put some full stops, you didn't cross the word limit, you don't have a million spelling mistakes, you just did the bare minimum, like a high school level or even below high school level answer, this is good enough as long as you focus on those 4 important questions. So practice those every single day. Tip number 4 is you have to test yourself. Now, there are some people, I'm sure you know a few of them as well, that they go for PTE every single week. And they are convinced that PTE is all about luck. So they think the more exams they give, the easier it's going to get, the higher the luck factor. This is absolutely wrong, okay? So this is absolutely wrong because PTE is not one of those exams that you can watch a video the night before and then go pass with 90 out of 90 the next day. And trust me, I'm one of those procrastinators. In university and high school, I would always wait the night before an exam, the night before an assignment, and just study or do the assignment for 6 hours straight, and then I would get good marks. PTE is not one of those exams. The reason why, it's an academic exam. And in different questions, there's an academic level of vocabulary that you have to know, specifically in the reading section. So if you're somebody who's not a scientist, you're not somebody who's reading in English every day, you're reading newspapers, you're listening to podcasts with scientists, you will be underexposed to the kind of vocabulary and the kind of content that they would talk about. And kind of a funny story. Every single time I do a reading class with my students. So I will go on our website, I'll go on our practice platform and I say, guys, here's 1,000 fill in the blank questions. I'll be honest with you. I've only done about like 50 of them. I haven't done 1,000. Pick any single number that you want. 978, 555, 286. And I will get them to pick the answer and I will do it in front of them and I will solve most of the blanks within 1 minute. And then maybe an extra 30 seconds to check, my answers. Within 1.5 minutes, I'm done. And you might be thinking, oh, this is unfair. This guy's an English trainer. His English is perfect. This is not true. The reason I'm able to do this is once you've done a certain number of questions, you get used to the vocabulary that they use. So when I look at fill in the blanks and I see the word scientist, I know the next word is going to be either scientist claims, scientist claimed, scientists discovered, scientists contended, scientists researched. Those groups of words quite often go together because in PTE, the questions are academic and they're taken from academic sources. Could be scientific journals, could be publications, could be research papers. But basically, those kinds of people who get their papers published, they don't get their papers published by using simple words. They always use intricate words. So you see what I did there? Instead of saying difficult words, they use intricate words, right? Instead of showing, they say illustrating or demonstrating. Instead of law, they say legislation. So every single person usually has a certain threshold. What I mean by that is that once you have done a certain number of questions in fill in the blanks, you start to see the same types of questions repeated again and again and again. And once you've done about 150, maybe 200, maybe 250, you will start to get an intuition for what is the kind of word that this academic person would use. What is the kind of vocabulary they use in this text? Okay, maybe I'm going to use the same types of words. I'm not going to use the simple word. I'm going to use the one with a deeper meaning, with a more intricate meaning. So this is tip number 4. You have to actually test yourself. You have to practice. You have to go on different websites. You have to do different questions. And you have to make sure that you've done enough that you're confident to perform mock tests. Which brings me to point number 5. Point number 5 is why should you go to the exam and pay $400 to PTE and fail and then keep giving the exam again and again and again when you could have tested yourself for like $50, okay? So there's a lot of different websites with different mock tests. If you want, I can make a separate video just on that. We have our mock test. PTE has their own mock test. So here's what you do. You go on the PTE website, you go to the mock test section, PTE practice test session, and you buy a package of 2 mock tests or 3 mock tests. And that's going to set you back about $50. Now, the only important caveat to this is when you do that test, make sure you have a proper headset and specifically ones that have the microphone close to your mouth. Imagine like a gamer headset. Make sure your settings, your volume, everything is up to 100% and then perform one of the mock tests. And then you're going to see your score. And if it's a pretty good score, it's close to 65, it's close to your target score, fine. Focus on the 1 or 2 areas that you think you're lacking in, go give the exam. But at least you know that you're not quite there yet. But if, let's say, you need 79 and your mock test results are in the 50s or 60s, you probably need proper guidance. You probably need a lot of effort to fix those areas. People don't magically go from 50 to 79 plus. Now, I can share many stories that I had students in the 40s and they worked their way up to the 80s. Maybe not in 1 try, maybe not in 2 tries. Sometimes it took them 3 tries. But to go from like an inferior level of English, you're in the 40s, to 79 plus, which is superior English, like that means that your English is better than a native speaker, okay? That is incredible. And most people could do this within a couple of months' time, with hard work, with dedication, with effort. Now, I'm going to leave you with one bonus tip. And this is one of my favorite things to do. If I had a sibling or a really close friend and I had a gun to my head and I had 48 hours to teach him how to pass the PTE exam, okay? What I would get them to do is do a mock test. Any mock test, could be our mock test, could be another mock test, and then see what their score is, okay? And let's say they get 55, 55, 55, 55. The next thing I would do to that person is I would explain to them what questions are the most important ones and what they have to do differently. So I would get them to memorize a couple formats in the speaking section. I would explain to them the tricks and shortcuts in the writing summaries, in the listening summaries. And finally, I would tell them to focus a lot on write from dictation in the listening section. And just by improving those 4 to 5 questions, their score would jump up tremendously. They would go from 50s to probably high 60s or low 70s. And then once they establish that benchmark, that, hey, if I know a bunch of basic tricks here, I can get 20% higher just from that. Well, then I would perfect with them only the questions that they struggle in. I wouldn't get them to study like hours and hours and hours of grammar. I would just get them to identify what is the weak area. Maybe it's vocabulary, maybe it's their fluency, maybe it's their short-term memory. And I would just focus a couple of sessions around that particular skill. For most people, if they fix their read aloud, repeat sentence, fill in the blanks, and write from dictation, they would be able to improve their score by 20% or more. And if you don't believe me, you can try this by yourself. You can do a mock test right now, anywhere that you do it. and you can share your result in this video, and I will personally comment and tell you what exactly you need to improve in order to jump up. And then I want you to practice those things for about a week. Come back to me after you've done another mock test and share what is your score afterwards. And I will make sure to personally go through every single comment and give you guys feedback regarding what are the issues and the errors that you're probably making and where you should focus on more. And if you're not improving by at least 10 to 15% just from that advice, you don't need to watch any other videos on this page ever again, okay? So this is how confident I am that focusing on the important tasks, understanding the scoring is going to disproportionately improve your score. And at that point, if you still need 79 and you're a couple points short, usually you may need just 1 or 2 sessions, maybe 3 sessions to fix up and really get that proper guidance, what you're doing wrong and how you have to fix that particular area. So this would be the advice I would give you if you are my own brother or sister and you have very limited time to pass the exam. So I hope this was helpful. I know I've covered a lot of repetitive things, but as you can see, PTE is not your normal English test. You really need to understand the strategies. You really need to understand how does the computer mark you in order to get the maximum points. And as promised in this video, I will reply to every single comment regarding your mock test, and I will attach additional resources and links to other videos that we put out for free with content that you can download from the exam material, and you can practice that and improve your score even further. This is Alex from Dream English and Visa Consultancy. If ever you need help with PTE, with your preparation, with mock tests, with any guidance, make sure to check the link in the description and the links in the comments, and there's always extra resources and classes that we can help you with. Until next time, and make sure that you like and subscribe this video right now, not to miss any future ones.